Every solo sailor eventually has a moment when conditions change. Caught out, cold, wet, and with darkness closing in, stuck at the helm, just a few feet aft of your warm, dry cabin that's just out of reach. That's when the value of a Pilothouse becomes most clear. To borrow a line from Henley and Fry, every form of refuge has its price. Welcome back to Small Sailboat Big Water. My name's Mitch. Conditions are favorable for these late summer storms to pop up. I'm happy to wait this one out. Discomfort isn't bad luck. It's a design decision, baked in long before you stepped aboard. Somewhere, someone decided where you would sit, what you'd need to be doing, and how protected you'd be while doing it. I never leave the dock without an updated wind forecast. I use a free app called SailFlow, but forecasts are too vague. It's best to keep an eye on a storm. The free My Radar app is best for that. I was watching a storm cell approach on radar when a sudden gust of wind knocked over my coffee.
Holy cow. That's incredible. That's awesome. Can you imagine being on Galveston Bay right now? Boy, that really healed over my boat.
This has been a courtesy reminder that windage on a small sailboat is everything. Anytime you add any gear on deck, you're adding windage, making your boat harder to control at low speeds, like when docking.
The winds are just going to build, so it's going to be a great day of sailing out here.
On small sailboats, the wind notices everything. Any gear added above deck becomes part of the sail plan, whether you like it or not. Windage also increases sideways drift, called leeway. It increases drag, acts as a brake when sailing windward. When riding out a storm, the load on an anchor from windage increases with the square of the wind speed. That means the force doesn't rise gradually. As the wind builds, it multiplies. For example, if your boat is comfortably anchored in 10 knots of wind, at 20 knots, the load on the anchor isn't doubled, it's 4 times higher. At 30 knots of wind, the load is 9 times higher. Sailboats with a moderate to heavy displacement, low freeboard, limited deck structure, and minimal area aloft will feel planted and not skate sideways. This is my 1982 Com-Pac 23. I found it on Facebook Marketplace and bought it for $4,000. Had the bottom and top sides painted at the old Seabrook shipyard. Went through the rigging, cleaned and painted the cabin. The sails are original, and I used some lines from my last boat. Threw on a new 5-horse Honda and a Bimini off Amazon. My slip fee is just under $300 a month. My liability insurance is $120 a year, and I do my best to get my money's worth out of it. Most sailboats are designed for those barefoot days, not the miserable ones, not for the days when things stop going as planned. To really know a boat, you need to know the story behind it. Here's the quick history in 20 seconds. Founded in the early 1970s by Les Hutchins, Com-Pac Yachts spent over 50 years building conservative, overbuilt fiberglass cruisers under second-generation family ownership, outlasting nearly the entire industry. Now, let's dig into how they transformed their iconic 23-footer to provide shelter and extend the sailing season. First introduced in 2011, This is a 23-footer for those who have paid their dues, and roughing it isn't as fun as it once was. Here's the rundown on the original design. Compact 23s have a solid hand-laid fiberglass hull, a synthetic cord deck, and a solid glass cabin top. A combination of lead and cast iron was used for ballast, encapsulated in concrete and sealed in resin. This 1,340-pound counterweight makes up over 46% of this boat's total displacement. The Pilothouse version adds roughly 600 extra pounds, while the internal ballast stays the same, reducing the ballast to displacement ratio by 8%. Let's find out why and where that additional weight is located. Converting this boat to a Pilothouse starts with a single, irreversible act. The original companionway sliding hatch and surrounding deck structure are cut away. This is the point of no return. By raising the cabin structure, Com-Pac increased interior headroom from only 4 foot 4 inches to a full 6 foot, an increase of nearly 40% in vertical living space. Every inch you gain below becomes leverage for the wind above, not to mention the added weight of the Pilothouse. Since the ballast was not increased from the original design, was the addition of the inboard diesel enough to keep the center of gravity low? Or did the Compact 23 just become a top-heavy, wind-driven monster? Let's take a look at the numbers. The 2 diesel with gearbox package options were the 9-horsepower Yanmar 1GM10, which weighs around 178 pounds, and the 12-horse Westerbeek, which weighs around 255 pounds. But to get the true installed drivetrain weight, you then add the rotating hardware that every inboard needs: the shaft, the stuffing box, on out to the propeller. This adds up to around another 30 pounds. And let's not forget the fuel. Let's say 10 gallons. Include the tank, fuel filter, water separator, hose, and hardware. And that's another 85 pounds, placed just where this boat needs it most: low and centered. The outboard motor hung off the transom is just the opposite. A typical 5-horsepower, 4-stroke long shaft outboard with bracket puts roughly 80 pounds all the way aft on the transom, exactly where the hull least wants it. It's been my experience. When you add 2 adults in the cockpit, the stern dips, the waterline climbs, and in large following seas, the cockpit floods on boats without effective scuppers. Shifting weight forward would definitely improve this boat's trim. In addition to that, outside of going electric, an outboard means committing to gasoline. Being a volatile fuel, it must be stored topside, adding weight high that raises the center of gravity, reducing stability. Diesel, on the other hand, can be secured below deck and act as functional ballast, although the stability it provides is vanishing. On a long motoring passage, a boat may start out feeling stiff, and by the end, feel more tender, when fuel and provisions are low. The extra weight on the Pilothouse version isn't just one lump, it's layered. Down low, the diesel drivetrain, fresh and gray water tanks and fuel system help stability. Mid-level, the dinette, enclosed head, interior joinery, and the inside helm station add neutral mass. But up high, the Pilothouse structure, windows, hatches, and anything attached raises the center of gravity. All in all, the weight seems to be well offset, keeping the boat close to its original balance. So, how much extra windage does the Pilothouse actually add to the Compact 23? The length of the pilot house is 7 foot, and its height above deck is 4 foot. It's designed with a slight taper and rounded corners, but we're still looking at roughly 28 square feet of windage. That's the equivalent of having a trysail permanently hoisted. When I'm leaving the dock solo, with stiff wind off the beam, timing matters. As soon as the lines are off, I have to get the boat moving in reverse immediately before the windage pins me back against the dock. The more windage a boat has, the faster it gets shoved sideways, meaning less time a solo sailor has to gain steerage and control. On a small sailboat, a pilot house solves real problems, but it creates new ones. Every convenience has a cost. Now let's add a few more common pieces of gear to get the full picture. How about a bimini and a cockpit weather cloth, solar and wind generators? Everything from a furling headsail down to jerry cans on deck adds windage, even the barbecue. Small sailboats don't start out sea monsters. They're drawn by master designers, balanced, deliberate, and honest. But add on enough high weight, stack on enough windage, and even the best design can turn slow, awkward, and hard to control. The lesson isn't to fear comfort and convenience, it's to respect balance. Add to your boat thoughtfully. Understand the trade-offs. Do this, and your boat stays a trusted friend as designed, instead of a monster that fights you when the wind pipes up. As sailors, we harness a powerful, invisible force and use it to enforce our will. My hope is that this video helped to show how that same force works against us when we ignore windage and balance. Compact Yachts did an amazing job on this motor cruiser. So run out and get yourself one today. Thanks for watching. My name's Mitch, and this is Small Sailboat Big Water. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons and share this video with a fellow sailor. And always, make it happen, Captain.